Shabbat Shalom, my friends. Welcome to our weekly Torah conversation. Well, it's over. Thursday, just 2 days ago, was the shortest day and the longest night of the year, the winter solstice. Astrologers pointed out that December 21st, 2017 was an unusually unlucky day because the Sun and Saturn lined up for the very first time since 1664. That's a scary thought, I guess. All in all, Thursday was just a great day to sleep in. From Stonehenge to Santa Monica, we were sternly warned not to start anything new on the 21st. Bad karma was everywhere, but all of that is now past. Day by day, the amount of light that we will encounter is going to increase. Spring is on its way, not quickly, but it's on its way. And better than that, Shabbos is here. Right now, a time to rest, a time to relax, and to think about those timeless stories and messages that emerge out of our most sacred text. Okay, so let's get into it. We are doing a Vayiggash, Genesis 44:1. The moment of confrontation is at hand, a moment that had been in the works since Jacob sent his sons down to Egypt at the time of a devastating famine in Canaan. They were to try to purchase food from the person who was in charge of all of Egypt's grain reserves. His name was Tzafnat Paneach, the one who reveals secrets, the dream interpreter, but who, as all careful readers know, was actually Joseph. Joseph, the bratty, spoiled, arrogant, self-absorbed, narcissistic, dreamy, second youngest son of Jacob, who had been sold into slavery so many years ago by his own, very own, loving brothers. Joseph had recognized his brothers when they first had come to Egypt and supplicated before him, begging for food, but they had failed to recognize him. We could play the metaphor game and say that the brothers never really knew how to see Joseph. They didn't perceive who he was at all. And that Joseph had experience enough to know just who those brothers of his were. But let's stick with the text right now. I don't really know what the phrase "what comes around goes around" actually means. Probably a riff on "as you sow, so shall you reap." In any event, the opportunity for revenge, for retribution is at hand. It is payback time. So Joseph toyed with his brothers the way perhaps a cat would toy with a wounded bird. He set them up with confusion and pain, knowing how his father loved Joseph's younger brother, Benjamin. Benjamin was the only other full-blooded brother of Joseph. A scenario was created by Joseph in which Benjamin's life was seen to be at risk. And if Benjamin's life was at risk, Jacob's life was at risk as well. And so now Judah, number 4 in birth order, steps forward to plead Benjamin's case before Joseph. Judah had been the one, if you remember, who convinced the brothers not to kill Joseph, but rather to sell Joseph into slavery. It will now be Judah's words that crack Joseph's facade and brings about the opportunity for reconciliation. V'lo yachol Yosef Lihitapek. Joseph could no longer restrain himself. He kicked all of the Egyptians out of the room and cried out in a voice that reverberated throughout the palace, Ani Yosef Ha'uravichai. I am Joseph. Tell me, is Dad still alive? Bible scholars will tell us that this passage probably dates from after the time of the fall of the northern kingdom of Israel, around the date 721 BCE. The southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah, Judea, is now ascendant. and thus the role of Judah, the eponymous founder of the kingdom of Judea, had to be uplifted and celebrated as kind of a backstory to what was happening out in the real world. If this kingdom named after Judah was now the sole surviving Jewish kingdom, we had to make sure that the Bible, the Torah, the stories in Genesis, supposedly written before, reflected glory and honor to Judah. And by the way, that's a good thing. It's a good thing for those of us who call ourselves Jews, the descendants of Judah. Rashi and Ibn Ezra and Ramban all try to understand what the text means when it says, V'lo yachol Yosef lehitapek. Was Joseph embarrassed? He was going to weep. Maybe he was embarrassed to cry before the Egyptians. Or was he worried that by coming out as an Israelite, he might lose his power, his status? Or, as per Ramban, did Joseph need to gather the strength necessary to set aside the pains of the past, and that he just couldn't do that with strangers watching? Or was there more? Was Joseph worried at an even deeper level that when he revealed himself to his brothers, the Egyptians would not only hear how deceitful the brothers were toward their esteemed leader, but also how treacherously Joseph had acted toward those same brothers? And if he could do that to his brothers, they might think, might there also be grounds for suspicion that he could act similarly toward Pharaoh? That would certainly not be a life-prolonging possibility. Joseph needed those Egyptians out of the room fast. My friends, reconciliation is a complex, multifaceted, really tough undertaking. Reconciliation is more than just saying, okay, hey, I'm sorry. Let's shake hands, walk away. All is good. In South Africa, reconciliation is the name given to that amazing process that was adopted to help the country move past the horrors of apartheid. Reconciliation there involved hearing the charges, receiving, listening to the responses, and then moving on to change the very structure of society without draconian efforts to punish and humiliate those who had done so much that was wrong, evil. But there was no guillotine. There were no mass hangings. There were no mass burnings. The process was reconciliation. Reconciliation in Congress is the bringing together of similar bills adopted in the House and in the Senate, and then arriving at wording which will satisfy the majorities in both houses. It involves compromise, the trading off of priorities. Reconciliation is work. Reconciliation is more than just an attitude. It is an attitude, but it is also very hard work. To be reconciled to something means that you have to climb part way down your tree, even as the other or others climb part way down their trees. If that doesn't happen, reconciliation is impossible. To be reconciled to something means to acknowledge that you cannot get everything that you want, and to accept the reality that the best things in life might not necessarily be achieved in a zero-sum game. Joseph needed to gird up his strength, to gather his strength, to accept reconciliation over revenge. He could have crushed his brothers, you know that. He could have had them killed. But Joseph did the math and accepted reconciliation instead. Look to us today. Are we strong enough to accept reconciliation over total victory? Is it always true that just because we can achieve a total victory, that is the path that we should take, that we ought to take. The world will long remember how World War I ended, with the Western victors opting for a crushing revenge instead of a reconciliation. Who knows? Had the victors after World War I gone for some form of reconciliation, maybe that slaughter and the Shoah that occurred during World War II, maybe they might never have occurred. Maybe there just isn't anything that we would ever call perfect justice. I wish that it were so. I don't think there is. Maybe only Don Quixote could expect that by tilting at windmills, something great and glorious can be achieved. Maybe revenge is sweet. Great phrase, revenge is sweet. But how long does it take for that sweetness to turn bitter in the real world? Joseph needed to set aside dreams that he had held for decades about how he would exact vengeance against his brothers. He did the math. He opted for reconciliation. My friends, not such a bad choice for him, not such a bad choice for us. And so as we slowly move toward more daily sunlight in our own lives, we might choose to consider whether Joseph's approach has something to recommend it in the way we carry out our own lives, how we make decisions. The choice, revenge, reconciliation really is ours. Nothing is preordained. Okay, all right. That's it. Have a wonderful Shabbat, a light-filled Shabbat, and a terrific week to come. Please hit share so that others might participate in our study and enjoy the light of finding a better way through life. Shabbat Shalom.